Ryan, you have so much going on in your world. Rogue Sun, you just announced another Ninja Turtles Power Ranger crossover. You're finishing up Power Rangers. Where to begin? Let's start off with celebrating the Massiverse and Rogue Sun. Congratulations on you just launched issue 6. Just hit
Yes.
hit the comic book world, but you announced at Comic-Con you've got a Choose Your Own Adventures themed, inspired issue. What was it? Make your own decisions, or what?
Yeah.
What was?
Make your own, follow your own plan. You know, be your own person. Yeah. No, I loved those when I was a kid, and it just felt like, you know, Kyle's always saying, you know, is like, hey, when you do independent comic books, you got to try and do stuff that's a little outside the box and try and do something different. And I was like, we could do something that would be really fun. And so we came up with this, and I wasn't sure I was going to do it until I knew how it would work for the character, and it actually worked really thematically well. And so we're going to play with that. But yeah, it's a choose your own destiny kind of story. But it's not just a, like, you know, you're going to get to page 3, and if you go after, you know, punch the bad guy and then you die. It's not that. It's going to be a little more it's a little more involved, which is kind of fun.
Well, now that you've finished your first major story arc, does it feel satisfying that, you know, this element of the story is now out there, the big twist, if you will, as to, you know, the mystery of his dad and you know, these pieces, having it out there so you can play with those elements in particular? Like, what, I guess, let me rephrase my question because it was not a good question.
No.
So, you know, now that the big twist of issue 5 and issue 6 is out there, is it satisfying that you now get to play with his reaction to the resolution of his father's murder?
Yes. I think what I like about finally revealing who the killer is and what that means for the character, without spoiling it for anybody, is it. I think it actually shows you what the book's actually about, which is from the very intention of what it being. I can't even really say it without spoiling anything, but this idea of, like, what it does is once you know the reveal, it sort of, I think it crystallizes the theme of the story. It makes it more than just a father-son story. It's more about families and relationships and all that stuff, and how crazy and get loud outside. So for me, it's nice that, because it sort of lets it form. And then I think with the completing the first arc, it's a very clear line of delineation on the shift in the book. You'll see what's going forward in the next 6 issues. It's nice to sort of always take the status quo and kind of turn it on its head a little bit, or at least change it. And so we want to do that. So going, you know, it's fun. As a writer, it's like, I have it planned out. I know what the ending is, but I don't know how I'm going to get there exactly. And so I'm like, okay, we're going to twist it this way. And so now I've just sort of, on the plane over here, I literally was working on it and going, okay, I can turn it this way and turn it that way. So it's fun. It's exciting. It's like kind of working without a net sometimes.
Well, when we last spoke, it was a couple of years ago, of course, pre-COVID, you were talking about building to Supermassive and introducing his father in a very different element, because, you know, it's different when you're introducing a character and a concept before the main book launches.
Right.
And now, you know, having your main story out there, very different dynamics. But then you and Kyle and the team just announced Supermassive 2 for 2030. So, I'm sorry, not 2030. Wow, 2023. My caffeine is...
I wish we had that much time.
Well, so Supermassive has been planned out for 7+ years. No, so for 2023. So getting to play with the other characters, the other involvement, you know, the universe is constantly expanding.
We're going to run out of room. Yeah.
Right. So you've got, you know, a lot of different pieces in play, but, you know, keeping Rogue Sun, of course, you know, as your central character, how is it playing with these new themes, these new elements as the Massiverse continues to expand?
For me, it's really fun. Like, I was actually on the ride over here. Melissa and I were talking about Dead Lucky, and there's some fun similarities between the characters that I was like, we should definitely touch on in Supermassive, and that was super fun. That might have been a spoiler, I don't know, but that was something I was really excited about. And I think that's the fun part about bringing in new characters and playing with it, because the other thing that's really fun is doing the next Supermassive. It's like Marcus was the Rogue Son in the first one. He's not going to be the Rogue Son in the second one, so you have a whole new dynamic amongst the characters. I think that's kind of the fun part about it, right? It's like it's the characters that you knew from the first one, but it's kind of flipped on their head again. So yeah, I love that we keep expanding out the characters, and then we keep expanding out the universe. I think this is about the right size for us. I wouldn't want it to get any bigger. I think we just don't have enough more. We'll have to get some more cutouts.
I mean, we've already expanded, you know,
pretty
significantly.
I know. I love that he's the same height as me, or slightly taller. But I think that's the fun thing about. I think that's the best thing about working in the massive universe. It's not really an answer to the question, but like this is the thing, is that I'm not doing this alone. I've worked on comic books where it's just you and you're banging your head against the wall trying to figure something out. And what's fun about this is, like, it's a whole bunch of friends of mine. And I'm like, like I literally had dinner, the lunch the other day with Matt and Michael, and I was like, hey, this is what I'm thinking for Rogue Sun, the next arc, and we just started talking about it, and we walked out, and I was like, oh my god, it's so much easier. And I emailed Kyle about it. And it's like having that support structure, having those friends that you can rely on and play off of their stuff and figure out what you're doing and stuff. That's the really fun thing that I don't think that you lose sometimes when you're doing a comic just by yourself. And like, we're really lucky to be able to work with our friends and actually be able to all have our own books and tell our own stories, but then have those stories all sort of coalesce into Supermassive and then have fun doing that. And then from that, it spreads out again. Like, it's fun, but it's also like, I don't think I could do it. We can do it alone. And that's the fun part, right? Like, we're working together and learning from each other, and at the same time, all of us sort of like supporting each other. And that's really fun, and that doesn't always happen in comics.
Well, speaking of team dynamics, of course, you all have experience with Power Rangers now. Does that add to the camaraderie as well, or how does that play in with building out this world? Because of course, you each have your own little niche with your characters, but having the Power Ranger arc, or behind your own personal experience, like that, does it feel like that adds to the collaboration?
I think the Power Rangers, for all of us, in some ways, it was sort of our testing ground. It was like, okay, take these characters that you love and play with them. Try and find a new way to talk about them. Try and find a new way, something different about them. And their voices already, so you can work on telling a story with them. And I think what's nice about that is, in the early days, it teaches you sort of like to build a story. And then it's like, okay, now when we move to Massive, it's like, now you got to create your own story. And so I think what we've always talked about is that it wasn't with that, like, Hasbro and Saban wouldn't let us do things. I think what's exciting about it for us is, like, we just knew there were certain areas we weren't allowed to go because those characters have been around for 30 years, right? And people have a lot of ownership of those characters, and they believe these characters act a certain way and do a certain thing. And what's fun about doing your own characters is that no one can tell you that character doesn't sound the right way, or they would never do that. And you can take chances and risks that you're not allowed to do because when you do Power Rangers, you're leasing those characters, right? Mm-hmm. Like Kyle leased it first, and then Marguerite did it, and then I did it, and now Melissa's doing it, and like, they're all leasing them. We're all just kind of playing with them. You don't want to break the toys. But when they're your toys, you can do whatever you want with them. That sounds weird, but you know what I mean? Like, it's that fun thing of, like, you learn how to tell a story with characters that are popular and with an eyeball on them, and then you take what you learn and then you apply them to your stuff. And that, hopefully, you can make them better, or not necessarily better, but you can make them your own.
Well, the last important question, you're finishing up the Charge to 100. Congratulations on a phenomenal run. And to Matt, we have to say it's a more phenomenal run. But you got to tie in some of the in-space elements, some of the bigger mythology and these characters that haven't interacted together, in this capacity before. How is it playing with those dynamics?
That one's fun because I've always liked those characters. I always liked being able to tell stories through the lens of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, but like sort of focusing on the stuff that was in the other seasons. Because when they all kind of layered up, they actually worked together. Like, Andros is out there fighting at the same time, and it was like, it felt nice to be able to sort of have them come and play in that universe, as opposed to sort of like shifting all, because it, like, the best way is like, Andros coming in and playing a side character role in the Mighty Morphin storyline is different than Andros being the lead in his own story. So it's fun for me to be able to bring them in and do new things with them. Like if you've read it, Andros picks some interesting choices and some dark choices that I don't necessarily think would have worked in his own story. But when you bring him in at this point in his life, after everything that had happened to him, I think that was a lot of fun. So I really enjoyed taking characters that I loved and trying to look at them in sort of a different way and spin them just a little bit. And so for me, it was really nice to be able, like I did with Astronema a little bit, I did with Andros. I never veered too far outside of, I think, Mighty Morphin for me, because I always felt that was where I wanted to tell the stories. But it's nice to be able to bring in stuff from the other shows that you love and just play with them a little bit and then send them back out, it's just like, I'm kind of like a little kid in a pool. I like venture a little far out, but I'm not going the deep end too fast.
Well, we have to go eat, so we're not going to go into Ninja Turtles this time. I do want to talk to you about Power Rangers Ninja Turtles 2 another time, but always a pleasure, and thank you so much.
Likewise, man.
So.
From leaping tall buildings to going off like gamma bombs. Switch your internet browser to comicsonline.com.